Welcome to OLevels Economics Unit 8 Supply. Supply refers to the willingness and ability of producers to sell a product. It's important not to confuse supply with production, as they're not the same thing. Production influences supply, but they differ, because not everything produced is sold immediately. For example, some goods produced today might be stored for future sales, while some products sold today may come from existing stock. Therefore, supply focuses on what is actually available for sale in the market, not just what is produced. Unlike demand, supply is directly related to price. When prices rise, supply increases, and when prices fall, supply decreases. This happens because higher prices mean greater potential profit, encouraging firms to produce and sell more. Higher prices also help firms cover production costs more easily. On the other hand, when prices fall, profits drop, and firms become less willing or able to supply products, leading to a contraction in supply. Individual supply refers to how much a single firm or producer is willing to sell, whereas market supply represents the total supply from all firms in an industry. Market supply is calculated by adding the quantities each firm is willing to sell at different prices, a process called aggregation. For instance, if one firm supplies 100 units, another 200, and a third 300 at the same price, the market supply would be 600 units. A supply schedule shows the quantities supplied at different prices. For example, a schedule for train tickets from station X to station Y might show that at a price of $50, 6,000 tickets are supplied, but at $25, only 3,500 tickets are supplied. Plotting this data on a graph gives us a supply curve, which typically slopes upward, showing that as price increases, supply extends, and as price decreases, supply contracts. A rise in price causes an extension in supply, meaning more is offered for sale, while a fall in price causes a contraction, meaning less is supplied. Sometimes, however, supply changes even when the price stays the same. This occurs when the conditions of supply change. For example, a good harvest season with favorable weather may increase the amount of rice available for sale at all price levels. This is known as a change in supply and causes the supply curve to shift. When supply increases, the curve shifts to the right, meaning more is supplied at every price. When supply decreases, the curve shifts to the left, meaning less is supplied at every price. There are several reasons why supply can change. The first is a change in the cost of production. If production becomes more expensive, for example, due to higher wages or more expensive raw materials, firms will supply less because they need a higher price to cover costs. However, if costs fall, firms can supply more at each price. Productivity also plays a key role. If workers or machines become more efficient, costs per unit decrease, allowing firms to supply more. For instance, if a worker produces 100 units a week for $200, the labor cost per unit is $2. But if productivity doubles to 200 units, the cost per unit is $1 unit drops to $1, encouraging greater supply. Improvements in technology also increase supply. New machines and better production methods make it cheaper and faster to produce goods. For example, technological advancements in manufacturing have made it easier to produce personal computers, increasing their global supply despite rising demand. Taxes and subsidies also affect supply. Higher taxes on firms, such as value-added tax or corporate tax, increase costs and reduce supply. In contrast, when taxes are lowered or removed, firms can afford to supply more. Subsidies, on the other hand, work in the opposite way to taxes. A government subsidy provides financial support to producers, lowering their costs and encouraging them to produce more. Removing a subsidy would therefore decrease supply. Weather conditions and the health of livestock and crops also play a major role, especially in agriculture. Favorable weather increases crop yields and supply, while extreme weather, like floods, droughts, or storms, can destroy crops and reduce supply. Similarly, diseases among livestock or plants, such as foot and mouth disease in cattle or blight in crops, decrease the amount producers can offer for sale. The prices of other products can also influence supply. Many firms produce more than one product. If one becomes more profitable, resources may be redirected towards it, reducing the supply of others. For example, if lamb prices rise, farmers may raise more sheep and fewer cows, decreasing beef supply. Sometimes, products are jointly supplied, meaning one product is automatically produced when another is made. For example, when more beef is produced, more hides become available for leather. In such cases, a rise in the price of one product leads to an increase in the supply of both. Natural disasters and wars can also drastically reduce supply. They damage infrastructure, disrupt production, and cause loss of labor. For example, the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan destroyed factories and reduced the supply of many goods. Finally, discoveries and depletion of resources affect the supply of commodities like coal, oil, and gold. Discovering new sources increases supply, while depleting existing ones reduces it. For instance, finding a new oil field raises global oil supply, but when mines run out of coal, future supply decreases. In summary, a fall in the price of a product leads to a contraction in supply, while a rise in price leads to an extension in supply. The supply schedule and supply curve show how price and quantity supplied are related. However, supply can also shift due to various non price factors, such as production costs, technology, taxes, subsidies, weather, health of livestock and crops, prices of related goods, natural disasters, wars, and changes in resource availability. An increase in supply shifts the supply curve to the right, usually lowering the price and causing an extension in demand. A decrease in supply shifts the curve to the left, raising prices and causing a contraction in demand. Understanding these concepts helps us see how producers respond to market conditions and how supply interacts with demand to determine prices and quantities in the market. Thanks for watching.